Prepare to uncover secrets long buried in the shadows of ancient texts, secrets that might just change how you see biblical history forever. Hidden away, often omitted from mainstream Christian teachings, lie the mysterious Books of Maccabees, 3 ancient texts preserved within the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. These writings tell stories of relentless faith, shocking sacrifices, and divine interventions that challenge everything you think you know about the struggle between good and evil. Why were these powerful stories left out of so many Christian traditions? What hidden truths do they hold? Today we will take you deep into the forgotten tales of the Maccabees, where ordinary men and women stood against an empire's attempt to crush their spirit and erase their identity. These stories have been concealed from most believers, but we're here to unveil the gripping narratives that will leave you on the edge of your seat. In this video, we'll dive into the Maccabean Revolt, where the Jewish people faced an empire intent on wiping out their faith. Picture this: miraculous interventions on the battlefield, unyielding bravery in the face of death, and the extraordinary rise of everyday heroes who defied all odds. As we delve into these stories, prepare to be confronted with questions that will challenge your understanding of biblical history and ignite a new appreciation for the sacrifices made in the name of faith. If you're ready for a journey through these hidden chapters of the Bible, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming revelations. And if you find this deep dive into the Books of Maccabees insightful, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments if you want to see dedicated videos on each book. Don't forget to share this video with your church group, friends, and family, so they too can explore these hidden gems of faith. Imagine discovering a world where the miraculous meets the mysterious, where stories of faith and defiance are preserved in books that many Christians have never encountered. The Books of Maccabees, held within the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, reveal a narrative of resistance, divine miracles, and unbreakable faith. These extraordinary books recount the fierce struggle of the Jewish people against an empire determined to erase their religious identity, offering gripping tales of divine power, epic battles, and faith that stood unshaken amidst overwhelming odds. But why were these texts excluded from many Christian Bibles? What truths did they reveal that have remained hidden for so long? Join us as we explore these ancient writings, uncovering dramatic events that defy conventional interpretations of biblical history. From miraculous victories on the battlefield to the stories of martyrs who faced death with unyielding conviction, these texts hold spiritual insights that are nothing short of astonishing. If this brief introduction has piqued your curiosity, don't hesitate to like this video and leave a comment below. Let us know if you're eager to see in-depth videos dedicated to the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd book of Maccabees, and we'll make it happen. For your convenience, we've included chapter links in the description so you can jump straight to any part of the video. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our series on the banned books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, including the Book of Enoch and the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. Links are in the description below. Now, let's venture into the mysterious world of the Books of Maccabees, a hidden chapter in biblical history where faith collides with ferocious opposition and divine miracles illuminate the darkness. The story begins with one of the most significant rebellions in Jewish history, sparked by a single act of defiance. The first book of Maccabees unfolds not merely as a tale of war, but as a dramatic chronicle of faith under fire, where the survival of a people's religious identity was at stake. Excluded from many Christian Bibles, this ancient narrative captures some of the most inspiring moments of resistance, faith, and miraculous triumphs. Set in the 2nd century BC, the Maccabean Revolt erupted during a time when the Jewish people faced relentless pressure to abandon their sacred traditions. The Seleucid Empire, under the iron rule of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, sought to impose Hellenistic culture and demand pagan worship. The sacred Temple of Jerusalem was desecrated, and Jews were commanded to make sacrifices to Zeus, a demand that many could not accept without renouncing their faith. It's a crisis that echoes through biblical history, reminiscent of Daniel's defiance against King Nebuchadnezzar's golden idol in Daniel 3. Confronted with a choice between forsaking their faith or facing death, the Jewish people stood firm. The Maccabean revolt ignited with a moment of defiance that would change history forever. A Jewish priest named Maccabeus, challenged by royal officials to offer a pagan sacrifice, made a decision that stunned his people. He refused. In a surge of righteous anger, Maccabeus struck down the official who enforced the king's command, sparking the flames of rebellion. This bold act mirrors the fervor of Phinehas in Numbers 25:7-13, who acted to preserve God's holiness. After Maccabeus's death, leadership of the revolt passed to his son, Judas Maccabeus, a man whose name became legendary. Known as the Hammer, Judas rose as a formidable military leader. Despite facing a much larger and better equipped enemy force, Judas and his small band of fighters repeatedly defeated the mighty armies of the Seleucid Empire. These victories were not just seen as strategic successes, they were believed to be miraculous interventions from God, drawing parallels to the story of Gideon's small army in Judges 7. In each battle, Judas and his men placed their trust in divine power before facing an overwhelming enemy force. Judas encouraged his men by saying, "Let us not fear the numbers, but trust in the Lord of heaven, who is mighty to save in battle." 1 Maccabees 3:18. This profound faith paid off, as their seemingly impossible victories confirmed to them that God's hand was at work. If you want to uncover the full story of how faith shaped history and witness the unbreakable resolve of those who fought for their beliefs, stay tuned as we explore these extraordinary texts. Imagine a series of events where faith, courage, and divine miracles come together to create an unforgettable narrative. The Jewish forces under the leadership of Judas Maccabeus achieved victory after victory, reclaiming their land and pushing back the mighty Seleucid Empire. However, the story takes on a deeper, more profound meaning in the 2nd book of Maccabees, where the unshakable faith of the martyrs reaches a new height. In this powerful account, they choose death, fully trusting that God would reward them with eternal life. At the heart of this moving tale stands a mother, a figure who witnesses the tragic deaths of all 7 of her sons. Yet she does not succumb to grief. Instead, she draws on an inner strength to encourage her sons to remain firm in their faith. She reminds them of the promise of resurrection and God's justice, mirroring the spirit of Hannah in the book of 1 Samuel, who dedicated her son Samuel to God's service despite her own heartache. This mother's role in 2nd Maccabees transcends her personal suffering. Her unwavering encouragement becomes a powerful symbol of belief in God's promises, not just for this life, but for the life to come. In this book, the concept of resurrection emerges as a central theme, taking on a profound significance. While the idea of resurrection is briefly mentioned in canonical texts like Daniel 12, it becomes a cornerstone of hope and faith in 2nd Maccabees. The martyrs face their deaths with the conviction that God will raise them up in the world to come, where they will receive their eternal reward. This belief reflects Pharisaic Judaism and prefigures Christian theology, where the resurrection of the righteous becomes a foundational idea, as seen in the New Testament, especially in Matthew 22:31-32, where Jesus affirms the resurrection, and in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul presents the resurrection as a core tenet of Christian faith. In many ways, the martyrs of 2nd Maccabees are forerunners of early Christian martyrs, whose deaths were also seen as victories due to their belief in resurrection. Their stories remind us that God's justice extends beyond this life, and those who suffer for righteousness will be rewarded in eternity. However, the book of 2nd Maccabees is not solely about the martyrs, it's also about divine miracles on the battlefield. One of the most dramatic moments takes place during the battle at Beth Zur, where the Jewish forces are vastly outnumbered and on the verge of defeat. But in this dire moment, something miraculous happens. Suddenly, 5 magnificent men on horses with golden bridles appear on the battlefield. These are not ordinary men, they are angels sent by God to protect Judas Maccabeus and his army. These angelic warriors rain down arrows and lightning upon the enemy, causing chaos and securing victory for the Jewish people. The book describes how these angels shielded Judas in their midst, keeping him from harm as they unleashed divine arrows and lightning upon the enemy, causing confusion and panic among their ranks. 2 Maccabees 10:29-30. This supernatural scene echoes similar angelic interventions found throughout the Bible, such as in 2 Kings 6:17, when the prophet Elisha's servant has his eyes opened to see the heavenly army surrounding them. This divine intervention in the Books of Maccabees finds striking parallels in other miraculous events throughout biblical history, offering a broader perspective on God's constant role in guiding and protecting his people. For instance, just as Judas Maccabeus and his outnumbered forces achieved miraculous victories against the Seleucid armies, we see God's hand guiding Gideon in Judges 7, where Gideon's small band of 300 men overcame a vast Midianite army with God's direction. Both stories reveal how God's power turns the tide in seemingly impossible situations, showing that numbers mean little when God is on the side of the faithful. The vision of Jeremiah handing a golden sword to Judas before battle also mirrors other significant moments of divine assurance in the Bible, such as when Joshua encountered the commander of the Lord's army before the Battle of Jericho, Joshua 5:13-15. In both cases, these visions provided not just a weapon but a divine promise of victory and a reminder that God's presence was with his people in their struggle. These moments in 2nd Maccabees serve as a powerful reminder that God is never absent in our battles. His angelic forces are ready to intervene when faith and righteousness are at stake. Another striking moment of divine guidance occurs when Judas Maccabeus receives a vision of the prophet Jeremiah, who hands him a golden sword and tells him to take it into battle. This sword is not merely a weapon, it's a symbol of God's assurance of victory. Jeremiah stretches out his right hand and gives Judas the holy sword, saying, "Take this holy sword, a gift from God, with which you will strike down your adversaries." 2 Maccabees 15:16. This vision instills Judas with the confidence he needs to lead his forces, knowing that God's favor is with him. This encounter echoes other biblical moments, such as when Joshua meets the commander of the Lord's army in Joshua 5:13-15, receiving assurance of God's presence as Israel prepares to enter the promised land. The second book of Maccabees is more than just a continuation of the Maccabean Revolt. It is a narrative that intricately weaves together themes of faith, divine intervention, and resurrection. The martyrs who gave their lives for the law of God did so with the unwavering belief that they would be vindicated in the afterlife. The miraculous victories on the battlefield serve as a reminder that even when outnumbered, those who stand with God never stand alone. The stories in this book deeply influenced early Christian thought, particularly in establishing a connection between martyrdom and resurrection. The courage of these martyrs and the divine interventions on the battlefield inspire a faith that looks beyond earthly suffering, trusting in God's ultimate justice. However, the story of the Maccabees does not end with 2nd Maccabees. In the 3rd book of Maccabees, we witness God's protection extending beyond the battlefield to deliver his people from political oppression in a miraculous way. Unlike the familiar setting of Israel, this story unfolds in Egypt, far from the scenes of Judas Maccabeus's campaigns. In this book, we see that God's power is not confined by geography. He is present to protect his people, even in exile. This time, the weapon of choice is not the sword, but faith in God's miraculous intervention. While the 1st and 2nd books of Maccabees focus on the Jewish struggle against the Seleucid Empire in Judea, the 3rd book of Maccabees takes us into the heart of Ptolemaic Egypt, where the Jewish community faces a new kind of persecution not on the battlefield, but in the political arena. And just when the situation seems most desperate, God steps in, and what follows is nothing short of a miracle. The story begins with Ptolemy IV setting the stage for an astonishing account of God's deliverance, showing that his power and protection know no bounds. Picture the scene: the ruler of Egypt, King Ptolemy IV, recently victorious in a military campaign against Antiochus II, arrives at the Temple of Jerusalem. Arrogant and full of pride, he makes a shocking demand to enter the Holy of Holies, the most sacred chamber of the temple, reserved exclusively for the Jewish high priest. However, this act of utter disrespect for the Jewish faith would not go unchallenged. As Ptolemy attempted to force his way into the inner sanctum, God intervened, striking him with sudden paralysis and blindness. The once powerful ruler found himself humiliated, unable to take even a step forward. Enraged and shamed, Ptolemy returned to Egypt with a thirst for vengeance, now directed not only at the Jews in Judea, but also at the Jewish community living in Egypt. Ptolemy's arrogance echoes that of other rulers in biblical history. Think of Pharaoh, who hardened his heart against the Israelites, or Nebuchadnezzar, who demanded that all bow to his golden image. Like those kings, Ptolemy was about to learn that no earthly power can stand against the will of God. Once back in Egypt, Ptolemy IV devised a sinister plan. He ordered all Jews in Egypt to be rounded up, registered, and marked for execution. His intention was not only brutal but also horrifying. He planned to gather the entire Jewish population into the city of Alexandria and have them publicly trampled to death by elephants. It was a moment of terror, reminiscent of Pharaoh's decree to kill all the Hebrew male children in Exodus 1:22. Ptolemy's plot aimed to wipe out an entire people simply because they refused to assimilate and abandon their faith. But when faced with this dire situation, the Jewish people in Egypt did something remarkable. Instead of succumbing to fear or despair, they turned to God in prayer and fasting. They called upon the God of their ancestors, much like the Israelites did during their time of enslavement in Egypt. And just as God heard the cries of his people in the days of Moses, he now listened once again. Throughout biblical history, prayer and fasting have been powerful acts of faith that invite God's intervention in times of crisis. In the book of Esther, we see how Esther called for a 3-day fast before approaching the king to save the Jewish people from Haman's plot. Similarly, in 2 Chronicles 20, King Jehoshaphat called for a fast when Judah faced invasion, and God delivered them from their enemies. In the 3rd book of Maccabees, the Jewish people's unwavering faith in God's power to deliver them was about to be rewarded in a miraculous way. As the Jews in Alexandria gathered, waiting for their grim fate to unfold, Ptolemy's horrific plan was set in motion. The elephants were prepared, ready to be unleashed upon the helpless crowd. But just as the beasts were driven towards the Jewish prisoners, something incredible happened. At the crucial moment, God intervened. The elephants, instead of charging at the Jews, turned on their own handlers. In a chaotic turn of events, the animals went wild, trampling the Egyptian soldiers and throwing the entire city into disarray. This divine act of protection parallels other miraculous interventions in the Bible. Just as God sent plagues to free the Israelites from Pharaoh's grip in Exodus, he now used the very animals meant to destroy the Jews to save them instead. It also brings to mind the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus 14, where God used the forces of nature to deliver his people from certain death. The story in the third book of Maccabees reveals an essential truth: God's protection isn't confined to the borders of Israel. Whether his people are in Egypt, Babylon, or any other foreign land, God remains sovereign over all circumstances. No earthly king or empire, no matter how powerful, can withstand the divine protection of the Lord. This theme of God's sovereignty over political systems is a recurring motif in the Bible, especially in the book of Daniel. There we see earthly kingdoms rise and fall, but the kingdom of God endures forever. Daniel 2:44. Like Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar before him, Ptolemy IV learned the hard way that God's hand cannot be stopped by human power. In the end, Ptolemy was forced to abandon his genocidal plans and acknowledge the power of the Jewish God. He issued a decree granting the Jews in Egypt the freedom to practice their faith without interference, recognizing that their God had delivered them in ways beyond human comprehension. The deliverance in the third book of Maccabees is a powerful reminder of how faith, even in the face of political persecution, can invite God's miraculous intervention. The Jewish people in Egypt did not fight their oppressors with weapons. Instead, they fought with prayer, fasting, and an unshakable belief in God's power to save them. And once again, God proved that no earthly ruler can stand against his divine will. This story of miraculous deliverance may not be as well known as the heroic battles of Judas Maccabeus, but it carries the same profound message: when God's people remain faithful, he is always ready to deliver them, no matter how impossible the situation may seem. What do you think of this miraculous deliverance in the third book of Maccabees? Does it remind you of other moments in the Bible when God intervened to save his people against all odds? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story of faith and divine protection inspiring, be sure to like and share this video with your friends. And if you've been enjoying our deep dive into the banned books of the Bible, don't forget to check out our other videos in this series. We've covered the book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees, and so much more. All the links are in the description below. The stories of sacrifice and courage in the books of Maccabees are not just ancient historical events, they hold deep lessons for us today. In modern times, we too face challenges and temptations that threaten our faith and spiritual values. The story of the Jewish people standing up to protect their faith in the face of oppression can inspire us when we encounter social pressures where moral values and beliefs are often challenged. Think about those who have sacrificed for their beliefs, whether in religious communities or those who have stood up for justice and truth in social struggles. Their steadfast actions, much like the heroes in the books of Maccabees, remind us that sacrifice and bravery are essential foundations for defending what is right. These stories invite us to ask ourselves, can we be as strong and resolute when our faith is tested? Moreover, in a world that often searches for miracles amid difficulties, The stories of divine interventions on the Maccabean battlefield serve as a reminder that, in the darkest moments, faith in a higher power can bring hope and change. While our circumstances may differ greatly from the time of the Maccabees, their spirit still echoes through modern stories of resurrection and God's protection for those who place their complete trust in Him. By viewing the story of the Books of Maccabees through the lens of the present day, we not only learn from the past, but also discover the strength of faith and resilience in our own lives today. Thanks you for watching. If these stories have left you wanting more, don't forget to check out the other videos in our series on the hidden books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. We've explored the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and more, each offering its own unique perspective on faith and divine purpose. You can find all the links in the description below. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Make sure to leave us a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video meaningful, share it with your church group, family, and friends.